Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Shahla Gulistani, and I am a fourth-year student in the Faculty of Arts studying International Relations and French. And I'm originally from Afghanistan. And I'll be the host for this session today alongside Laila. Laila, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for attending our workshop. My name is Laila Shaheen. I am a second year art student at UBC. I'm involved with the First Generation Student Union as a VP internal, and in this conference as a part of the content committee, and I'll be also hosting this workshop. And I'm from Syria and an FGLI. So yeah, welcome everyone.
Thank you so much, Leila. So before we start, we would like to acknowledge that even though we are conducting this session online, the Genuine Conference has been planned and is hosted by UBC, and UBC is located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish nations. And I would also like to go over some housekeeping items, just so we have a smooth session throughout. So a reminder for everyone that the session is being recorded. Although we encourage everyone to have their cameras on and actively participate in the session. We understand if you'd like if you prefer to have your cameras off, and you can also change your name if you are not comfortable showing that. And also we ask to mute your lines during the session, just so we can prevent some background noises and have ensure optimal sound quality. But of course, throughout the sessions, we're going to have discussion and Q&A sessions in which you're encouraged and to unmute yourself and share your comments, ask questions. Alternatively, you can also use the chat box to ask your questions or address your comments. We also have a link to a Google Doc where you can post your questions if you'd like to ask anonymous questions. Your active participation will be greatly appreciated. Also, should you encounter any technical difficulties throughout the session, please don't hesitate to text or message me in the chat or Laila, and have a great session.
Okay, then let's move on to our workshop overview. So in this workshop, what we're hoping to cover and what we're hoping you would take with this workshop, we will facilitate it by starting with some polling questions to gauge your understanding of this issue. And then we will move on to workshop objective, what we're hoping you would take from this experience. Then we would define some key terminology crucial for discussing such a topic. We will move on and discuss some key obstacles for FGLI students with multiple underrepresented or marginalized identities that when it overlaps, it creates multiple difficulties for specific for this group of students. And we will listen to our two guest speakers, Shaza and Azuz, and their experiences so far in their university careers. And finally, we will have a little group discussion and Q&A segment. Next. So let's start. So the first polling question is, what percentage of refugees of the relevant age is enrolled in some form of post-secondary education? So just pick the number you think is most accurate. So we have 9 out of 12 answers. Just waiting a little bit more.
I think that's everyone. I'll end the poll.
Okay. So it's true, actually, the correct answer is 3%, which is very saddening. The percentage actually saw an increase in the past 3 years from 1% to 3%, which indicates that though we are moving in the right direction, we still have a very long way to go to make education more accessible to refugees. Okay, moving on to the second polling question. So, what percentage of refugees enrolled in universities are female students? Okay. Yeah, so actually, uh, your answer is a little bit more pessimistic. It's 41%. For refugee girls and women, the prospect of attaining higher education is even slimmer. But it saw an improvement as well in the past few years. And interestingly enough, women or female students have higher graduating rates than male students. Yeah. Okay, moving on to the third question. How many of those enrolled who identify as FGLI actually get to complete their studies? Okay, so the correct answer is actually sadly 27, not 67. Being a first generation university student from a low income family can be especially prohibitive. These issues are evidenced in the university completion rates of refugees in Canadian universities, only 27%, while compared to other immigrant classes such as skilled workers and the business class, which are 50% and 59% respectively. Okay, so moving on after I guess learning about these statistics, um, the objective of this workshop is to explore the reasons behind these embarrassingly low numbers and increase your understanding of the complexity of the identity and the challenges faced by FGLI students who come from conflict zones, especially when multiple identities, marginalized identities overlap. And finally, critically discuss and evaluate possible actionable steps to decrease and hopefully eliminate these challenges. Back to you, Shahla.
Thank you, Laila. So before we jump into the discussion portion of the workshop, would like to go over some key terminology because we have been using these terminology and we'll be using them. So it'd be nice to have an understanding of what we define as first generation student. So first generation student for FGSU or first generation student union is someone whose parents or legal guardians did not pursue or finish their post-secondary education. It could also be someone whose parents did start post-secondary education and finish it, but in another country. That the qualifications were not recognized here in North America. These first generation students come from very diverse cultural and socioeconomic backgrounds, and they have multiple identities. And as Laila mentioned, these identities are always or almost always very marginalized, underrepresented, and they overlap each other. For example, being a low income, being a part of a BIPOC community, or their gender, there's always an intersectionality between all of those. And FGLI or first generation and low income students also face academic challenges, financial, cultural, and mental health challenges. Moving on, the next terminology that we are gonna dissect or go over is a displaced person, and the official definition of a displaced person, according to the United Nations, is in the context of emergencies, a displaced person is someone who's had to leave their hometown or home country as a result of a natural or technological event. And these displaced people could be internally displaced, meaning within their countries from one province to another province, or they can be externally displaced from one country to having to move to another country. And then we have a refugee who is similar but not quite to a displaced person. It's someone who has been forced to flee their home country because of persecution, war, or violence. And a refugee has a fear of persecution for reasons of race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group. And they cannot return home, or they're afraid of going home. And these war and ethnic and religious violence are leading causes of refugees fleeing their hometown. Laila?
Well, after understanding the terminology we are using, it's important to gain a little more perspective on this issue through the statistics we have here. So, according to the UNHCR, a United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, 1% of world population is of the world population is displaced. 80% of them come from countries affected by acute food insecurity and malnutrition. 73% of them are hosted in neighboring countries, primarily Turkey, Colombia, Pakistan, Uganda, and Germany. 68% come from just 5 countries: Syria, Venezuela, Afghanistan, South Sudan, and Myanmar. As of sorry, as of 2020, there are 4.2 million stateless people in the world, and a stateless person is someone who is not considered as a national by any state under the operation of its law, such as the Kurds in Syria or the Palestinians. In 2017, there were 2 million asylum applications filed. Refugees were resettled to 26 countries. And an overview of the, I guess, refugee status and displaced people in the world as of 2020. Back to you, Shahla.
Thank you so much for that. So next we're gonna talk about some barriers and obstacles that first generation students who are from conflict backgrounds usually face. And these obstacles are not unique to them, but the intersectionality of all of them are unique to these uh, students. So these obstacles include, but are not limited to, gender inequality, language barriers, safety challenges, pressure of being the only hope, and survival guilt, and lack of support. Um, so, gender inequality and language barriers, I think, are pretty self-explanatory. Mostly people, students from these backgrounds, it's usually harder for girls and women than for men to get an education and get access to education, especially post-secondary education. And when they refugee and displaced student, when they go to other countries to get education, one of the most challenging things for them is language barriers, because they haven't had access to learn that language prior to fleeing their country. So it's one of the biggest challenges that they face. In addition to that, there's the safety challenge, which could have been safety challenges for them, as a result of which they had to flee the country, which will have tremendous, long-lasting mental health uh, effect on them. But also, most of these students, they have their families back at home, and just the thought of them being in danger can also affect their their mental health, which is one of the biggest obstacles that these students face. In addition to that, just there is the pressure of being the only hope for these students because, um, for example, I can give personally my own example that being the only one from my family who lives abroad, there is a certain pressure that comes to it because every time I talk to my family, uh, they kind of mention the fact that I'm here and I have to do something to get them here as well, which creates this pressure for me that to complete my education as quickly as I can, and even to not prioritize my education and prioritize the fact that I should find a way to get them out of a country that has been in war for so long and that could challenge their safety and their life. That is the pressure of being the only hope, and it can look different to for all the FDLI students who are from conflict zones. Another challenge and obstacle is the survival guilt, which is kind of related of this pressure of being the only hope, which is being the only one coming out of a situation that has put other people in danger, and you feel like you're out of that situation. So you feel a type of guilt, which the survival guilt has often been associated to other PTSD disorders, but not usually for refugees, which I think it is a big part of being a refugee. You feel like you've left your country behind, you've left your people behind, so you feel a certain guilt. And this often shows in a way of being reminded of your home country and just wanting to go back even though it is dangerous and not safe for you to go back. And there's also a lack of support for these students because there isn't a big community, and this lack of support is also stemming from the fact that usually no one from and their family back at home or their families, refugee families here, have had the same education as these students, so they can't really go to their families to ask for support going through the education system and how to navigate that and handle the stress that comes with education in a foreign country. So there is a lack of support and lack of systemic support as well, which is a big obstacle for these students. And next up, we have our speakers.
So to, I guess, gain a little more perspective and to learn more about this issue, the best way we find is to actually listen and hear what students who come from conflict zones have to say about this issue. So next we have Shaza Alshamsi and Azuz Al-Rubaye sharing their experiences. So to introduce Shaza is from Homs, Syria. She moved to Canada in 2019 to study at UBC as a WISC scholar. WISC stands for World University Service of Canada. She is a high-achieving first-generation low-income student passionate about science. She is in the Faculty of Science and interested in pursuing a degree in behavioral neuroscience. In her free time, she likes to stay active physically and mentally by playing sports and reading novels. As for Azuz, Azuz was born in Iraq, Baghdad, and immigrated to Canada in 2017 to pursue his higher education as a WISC scholar as well. He is a high-achieving first-generation low-income third-year political science student at UBC, currently living in Victoria. He has many hobbies, but mostly likes to ride his bike and bake pizzas and try to do that as regularly as possible. So yeah, let's start first with Azuz, and let's hear about your story.
Hello, everybody. It's nice seeing everybody here. Thank you for the lovely introduction, Laila. I will try to just summarize my story in like a few minutes. I know I would need hours to say the whole story, but in just a few minutes, I'll give you hopefully a good overview of what happened with me, and then I'll take any questions from the hosts as well. but yeah, I was born in Iraq, and when I was 6 in 2003, the Iraq War happened. We stayed there for 2 years, and then we moved to Jordan for 1 year. But then being a refugee in Jordan was not easy for us, so we went back to Iraq, and also it was not safe for us. We stayed there for a few months, and it was just like a nightmare. So we ended up moving to Syria, actually. And we stayed in Syria for 5 years. And at the end of 2011, approximately 7 months after the Syrian crisis happened, we moved to Jordan because also it was not safe for us. I actually have been called double refugee because I moved from one place to another. Yeah, one of the funny things. But yeah, and after being 5 years in Syria, we moved to Jordan, and I stayed there for 6 years. And then I was able to come to Canada in 2017 as part of WISC program. They got me to Pearson College here in Victoria. I'm currently in Victoria. And I did 2 years at Pearson College, and then I switched to UBC. And currently I'm a third-year political science student at UBC. But yeah, I mean, what I would like for the people to know is that how education was important for me in my life, and how much the support of my parents kept me like into school, because we moved from one place to another, from one country to another, and back and forth, back and forth. And even one time I counted how many schools I attended, and I think there were about like 15 to 16 schools until I finished high school. And many times it was not safe for us, like to go to school, and also because refugees tend to move a lot. So we probably moved like over 30 times, but I think it was only 15 schools or something, in 3 different countries. But it was really important for my family, my parents specifically, to keep me in school and to support my education no matter what. So, and I'm really grateful for that. And I did not miss any year in school because my parents were really supportive. And I know that many families would, especially refugees, would take their children out of school to make them work or something. But that was not a priority for my parents. And even also when it was unsafe for us, like with school, that we would move to another place or another country or another city just to be in school. And yeah, so education was a big part of my life. It kept me busy while being a refugee. I was a refugee for 12 years of my life. So it was something, I mean, for a child, we don't know a lot, and we don't know what's going on. Even if we are unsafe, we don't know what is going on. So and all of the effects came to me after I came to a safe place, after coming to Canada. But even when it was unsafe for me to go to school, I mean, the 2 of my schools in Syria and Iraq were bombed. And this is one of the reasons, like we would move from one place to another. Yeah, so coming to Canada here and going to university was something like big for me and my family, because I'm the first person. Both my parents didn't go to higher education, so it was something special, I guess, and it would be a start for a generation of achievers and people going to university, hopefully. Yeah, so coming to here is a great opportunity for me. And yeah, and like I could go on and on talking about things that happen and things that could have happened, but I hope this gives you a good introduction on how important education for me and in my life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Azuz, for sharing your story with us. And we'll definitely come back to ask you further questions. And if anyone has questions to Azuz, you can just drop them in the chat box or send like a private message if you want to be anonymous. And now let's hear from Shaza.
Hi everyone. Thanks Laila and Shahla for this nice introduction, and thanks everyone for joining us and being interested in this event. My name is Shaza, and I was born in Syria and lived most of my life there until my age 14, in a small city, in a big city, Homs. And when I moved, I was 14. I moved to Lebanon after I lost my eldest grandchild, of the big family. He was my cousin, and he was like about 22 years old. After that incident, we left Syria, moved to Lebanon. I was in my grade 9, and then in Lebanon, I couldn't have access to school to grade 9. They will put me in the grade 7 instead, because the curriculum in Lebanon is English based curriculum, while in Syria it's Arabic based curriculum. Based on that, first I didn't accept that, but there is no other solution, so I went to grade 7. And then I did great at that school, and I was one of the first top students to succeed in that grade. Then I told my family I'm not gonna stay to do grade 8 and then do grade 9 again. My family didn't accept didn't accept me to move back to Syria, but then other scenarios and other difficulties we faced in Lebanon forced us to move me and my family back to Syria. We moved back, and then I got my grade 9. In my to just compensate for the years that I lost abroad and not having the correct sequence of grades that I need to pass. I studied grade 10 myself in home, and then registered for private courses for grade 11. I did that in summer, and then I registered for grade 12. I registered in Syria. The curriculum is there's 2 sections. Either you will be in the literature or you will be in the scientific field. My dream since I was a child is to be a medical doctor. So of course I would choose a scientific stream, but that would come with a lot of difficulties with the math and with the biology, especially that I am escaping passing many years, 2 years with just fast, just to catch up my age. I did that. I studied myself grade 10, registered for grade 11 and registered for grade 12. After almost finishing the curriculum, many difficulties happened again in my city. The situation, the war, it's worsened, and we forced to move back to Lebanon. At that time, my father would say, "Okay, you are coming just to see me, because it has been so long time. I haven't seen him that time. But then I will go back alone to Syria to complete my education. But then when I moved there to Lebanon, my father wouldn't accept me to go back to Syria. It was just a joke from him for me to come and see him and to stay safe in Lebanon instead of going back to the war in Syria. It was so horrible. I can't blame his decision at that time, but also I found they need to understand me. I am in that age, and I am losing my future. If I would stay safe, if I would prefer to stay safe and lose my years, that doesn't make sense for me. I prefer to die instead of losing my future. So I said, okay, I'm not gonna stay here. He said, okay, let's choose a school here in Lebanon. I went to school. I tried actually to understand his point of view and go to study in Lebanon, but then the curriculum there, although I was studying the Syrian curriculum because there was specific schools there in Lebanon who teach the Syrian curriculum, but then they were behind in courses, and I was like way ahead of them. I would say to my father, that's not the type of education I'm looking for. I want to go back to Syria. I have my teachers who are like very professional, but they just can't escape from Syria. There's many reasons I can't like now relate on that, but there are professional teachers who can't, but I want them to go, like I want to go back to them. That was long and difficult journey for me to like to convince my father with that. But then my health situation went down, and I was almost feel like falling in depression. And my big family would call my father and say, "Okay, let's let her go back," and it's like she's living with us, and what will happen to us will happen to her, and like this, these kind of talks. And I would say to my father, like, I am mature enough. I was like, I can't go back myself. If I was 18 years old, I would go back myself. But then I was below 18 years old, and I can't pass the border without an exception from my father. So I can't do anything without his exception. So he finally he said, okay, you'll be back. But then how about the war? Then if I said yes, I said, okay, you are not blamed for anything in the future. Because at that time, the fear was not of dying. The fear was of losing or losing any part of your body. That was the fear. And so I told him, no, you are not gonna be blamed for anything. It's my decision. I want to be back. He accepted. I went back to Syria. It was difficult life with my. I lived with in my grandfather's house. I love them all, and I spent such a good time with them. But then the situation was itself difficult. Like the war was impacting a lot, like impacting us a lot. There was no electricity, there was no water resources, and we need to pay a lot of money to do that. Um, at that time, my grandfather's family could afford that, and we were like kind of better than many families at that time. But still, it's impacting us. And at some point, I have my school, who I was educated there. To be bombed after like few minutes after I left. So I like, for example, I'm leaving now, and then after 2 minutes, the school is bombed, and the bomb is where I was sitting. That was horrible, and we hear a lot of injuries and these situations. But that I did it. I had my grade 12. I moved back to Lebanon. In Lebanon, I like the new journey. In Syria, I had a when I applied for university and I got an acceptance in the chemistry field, but then I couldn't. My father said, "Okay, enough is enough. You need to go back to Lebanon. You are not staying in homes anymore." And so I moved back to Lebanon. I started to look for opportunities to register in a school, in a university there. But then they would not accept me because my legal residency status would end like within 6 months, and they wanted to be at least 1 year of of valid residency, and I can't renew it because it still has 6 months valid. So there was no solution. I tried. I joined a university. They would say first that they are waiting for me to renew my residency, and then until the exams happened, they called me and they said, "No, you can't do the exams anymore." After like spending 2 months with them, I can't do the midterms because I don't have the legal papers. So I left that university again. I tried to look for opportunities then for other universities, and then look abroad for other opportunities for scholarships to study abroad. I applied for UK, I applied for US, for Canada, for many countries. during that time, I was also accepted in a university in Lebanon, and I studied biomedical science there. I was almost graduating until I received um, my scholarship to come to Canada to study again. When I moved here, I decided to do I was planning to do biomedical science again to complete my what I started. But then my goal is like the long-term goal is for me is to be a medical doctor. So eventually I will apply for an MCAT and then for the medical school. That so having a medical degree in biomedical science and then having another degree is a good thing to think about. So I left the biomedical degree and then started a new degree in behavioral neuroscience, which I'm gonna apply like a few months from now, and I hopefully will be accepted in the behavioral neuroscience. And my plan is to finish that degree and then apply for the MCAT. So that's in short about me. Yeah, thank you for listening.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
sharing, Shaza. That was really inspiring, and we wish you best of luck in your MCAT journey. Um, moving on, I just have a couple of questions to ask our speakers, Azuz and Shaza. But if any of you have any question, feel free to jump in or write it in the chat. So first question is, as the obstacles that I mentioned previously, in addition to that, what are some other challenges you guys faced after coming to Canada to study here as an FGLI student who is also a refugee coming from a conflict background? And also, what are your personal experiences in regards to being the only hope or experiencing survival guilt? Have you experienced it, and how was it? How did you deal with it, or how are you dealing with that? And Azuz or Shaza, any of you guys can go first.
You may go first, Shahla.
Okay, so the first question is about feeling the only hope for your family. Is that correct?
That also, and your experiences here, what are some other challenges you faced after coming here to study in regards to post-secondary education and the education system here?
Okay. Yeah. So regarding the challenges that I face is the language barrier. Um, when I came here, like my IELTS, I would do like I need to do an IELTS degree, IELTS scale or score to need to figure out what's my level in English. So it was not that excellent, but it was not bad. So it would be in the middle. But still, it would be a difficulty for me to express all my feelings and all what I wanted to speak or to say. That was one challenge, and it's still. I think what helps is like being self-confident that you have the ability to express your feelings even without like knowing the good words, but still you can explain the word itself in another way, right? And also having understanding connections with people, and like being surrounded with people who are trying to understand you and support you to improve yourself. That's also another thing. For me, when I came, I would try to make new connections. And I think building a new connection is a difficulty itself because you are coming alone to a country where you don't know anybody here. You need to start from zero. And for that, I was trying to join every event, whether that I am interested in or not, just to make like build new connections, to know people, for people to know me, and like to express that I am present here. So building new connections, the language barrier, and also missing the family, that was one of the best, one of the like top difficulty, not the best, no, sorry. Yeah, so that was like a huge difficulty for me to accept that I am new to a country where like I felt like I am so sad because like I felt I am detached from my family forever, and that had a huge impact on my mental health and like I would like spend nights crying because like I am not used to spend that time away from them. Still, I moved to Syria, but I was with relatives. I was with people who I love. But here I don't have anybody to connect with. And so yeah, I would think that these are the issues that I faced as difficulties here.
Thank you so much for sharing. I can definitely relate to all of that. Azuz, can you share your thoughts?
Yeah, of course. Uh, Luckily, I did not have any difficulties with gender because I'm a man and I'm privileged, and I recognize that. Uh, or language barriers, because before coming to Canada, I spoke English pretty well. So that was not an obstacle for me. Even academically, I was able to write essays and stuff before coming to Canada. But I definitely experienced the survivor's guilt, of being the only hope, and also being in a safe place was a little bit strange for me for the first few months. But I was able to, or I managed uh, to get used to that, because for a long a long period of my life, I'm not used to being in such a safe place. Uh, yeah, and also I had PTSD for the first few months, but to to uh, I was able to sit with a counselor for a few months, and that worked out to be pretty well for me. Uh, but definitely, I mean, I still take care of my family right now. I have 4 members that I take care of. uh, so this would lead to some financial difficulties for me, because I'm a full-time student right now, and I take care of my family who are currently still refugees, and also because I was there with them before I came here, so I know exactly what they're going through. And for me, it's funny. For me, helping them is like helping myself in the past. So I try to do that as much as possible. Uh, but definitely, the first few months, or at least 6 months to a year, were the most difficult, until I get used to things and be able to figure out or navigate ways to get support and to help myself. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. Another question we would like to ask is, what are some ways the system, the secondary education system here, or universities and institutions can help provide support for FGLI students who are refugees or come from conflict backgrounds? And how can they improve, and what are some resources you think should be provided for students with your background?
Okay, I can go. I think one of the good things to support newcomers, especially like refugees and youth, youth people who are coming to a new, completely different culture and different environment, is to connect them with resources, because still they may know English, but they can't navigate maybe the system here and how to connect to reach out to these facilities. Um, yeah, I think that connect them with the resources for volunteer opportunities, for work opportunities, to improve their English, or to academic courses, for example, they need support for some courses. So where to go and who to ask. Also like support them mentally, and to say to them that like I am here also to listen to you, and I know it's kind like it's difficult for you to be abroad and to face all of these challenges alone. So yeah, I would say like physical and mental and like health support.
Thank you so much for sharing. Aziz?
Yeah, I think that people deal with, or people face different issues, or they deal with different issues differently. But mainly, I think what institutions here can do is develop some sort of a support system. It's either by advising or just, I mean, we all have advisors, but also like trying to talk to them, talk to people like us and see what they're facing, what kind of issues they're facing, how can they be supported. Also, many of the regulations or rules here, sometimes we cannot live with. For example, like if you're writing, I don't know, a big paper and your first language is not English, I don't think you should be like graded just like as someone whose first language is English. So this is one of the language barriers that some people have. But also just some sort of support would be good, because here, like, we don't have our families or someone to support us. Basically, if you have friends, you're supported by your friends. If you're not, you have to be your own support. So I think developing a support system for students would be good. Thank you.
That's a great point. Thank you. We have an anonymous question. Someone's asking, how do you deal with imposter syndrome as someone who wasn't born here in Canada? Then if you guys have any thoughts on that.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
How do you feel with imposter syndrome as someone who wasn't born in Canada? And to define imposter syndrome, it refers to an internal experience of believing that you're not as competent as others perceive you to be. So basically, you think that you're not as intelligent or smart or competent as people here think you are, and that's imposter syndrome. So did you have to deal with that coming here, moving to Canada at all, or no? How have you had any experiences with that?
I can go first. Actually, like when you have the imposter syndrome, is that when you are doubting yourself and doubting what you achieved and what characteristics that make you unique. And for that, I would say actually to direct like their view, the person who is doubting himself, is that to the things that they achieved. If they made it to that extent and they arrived here to Canada, so that means they have passed through many difficulties and they were good to face them, and they deal with it in a very good manner and way of navigating it. So I wouldn't find any reason to keep that person thinking that way. If we shifted their way of thinking and looking on how successful they were, and how many people who are left behind, not maybe because they didn't have a chance to come here or to do that change in their life, but also they didn't believe in themselves and they didn't take the step to do that. So that makes a person unique, that they found their potential and they worked on that and they took the step and they tried.
Yeah, definitely. Azuz?
Yeah, for me, I don't think, or not that I know of, I don't think I have faced that syndrome in my life. I think I'm a independent and confident person, and I, like, if I face such a thing, or like I use my differences in my interest. So if I'm different in a way, I would use it in my interest. Yeah, but basically, I don't think I've faced, or I don't think I've thought too much into this.
Yeah, thank you both for your thorough responses. Being aware of the time, we have about 6 minutes left, and we really don't want you to miss a chance to discuss everything that we've talked about, because it's pretty heavy stuff, and I think it's good to talk it out and maybe like I guess, just see what other people think. So we're gonna go into 2 breakout groups for like 5 minutes just to kind of reflect. So one group will go over, I guess, the theme regrets and challenges, and one with hope and opportunities. So these are the questions. So for the first group, you will talk about obstacles faced by FGLI students from conflict zones, what you learned about that today, how does post-secondary education system hinders these students from accessing and completing their education, and finally, what do you think the future holds for FGLI students who come from conflict zones after like all of what you learned about today? And the second group will talk about what should be done to support students who come from conflict zones, and how and why should universities increase the number of refugee students enrolled in universities. And finally, the same question, what do you think the future holds for FGLI students from conflict zones? So we're just gonna break out into 2 groups. So if you're group 1, regrets and challenges, group 2, hopes and opportunities. Yeah.
Yeah, so our goal is to just break the gap between challenges and support. So yeah, people in Azuz's group are gonna talk about regrets and challenges, and then people in Shaza's group are gonna talk about hopes and opportunities.
Should we join the groups, because like no one would come now?
Yeah, true. I don't know. You can see the groups, right? You can join anyone if you want.
Okay, I'm gonna go join.
Okay. Which one are you joining? So I joined the other one.
I'm gonna join number 1.
Okay. Is the discussion going, or should I close the rooms?
I think let's just, because it's 4 p.m. It's 4 already, so we should just
I'll say
let's
more
give them
minute.
like 1 more minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you gonna close up, wrap up?
Yeah, I'm gonna close the room.
Okay.
Should we do a share back, or that wouldn't be necessary, I think, because we're out of time?
Yeah, just wrap it up.
Yeah, I'll just wrap it up.
Wrap it up.
Hi guys, welcome back. I'm so sorry if I cut your discussions because I noticed we're out of time. So I had to bring everyone back. And my camera's off. Okay. Yeah, we were gonna do a share back, but looking at the time, I don't think we can do that. But thank you so much for participating today and joining our session. It was I learned a lot personally from Shaza and Azuz, and I hope you did too. Thank you again to Azuz and Shaza for joining, sharing their stories, and being so open. Um, and it was wonderful to hear from both of you. And thank you to Laila for hosting this workshop with me. And I hope you enjoyed. If people don't have any last questions, that's it from us for this session. And yeah, thank you so much for joining, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
I think Shaza has something to say. Do you, yeah?
Yeah. First, I need to say thanks for everyone who is in need now to leave. Thanks very much for joining us. But I still have one question that was mentioned in the breakout room, and I need to answer it. So about the counselor, maybe some people are not comfortable with going to a counselor, and that comes to their personality. That doesn't come to being refugee or being any kind of like belonging to any group of people. That only comes to the personality of that person. If they understand the importance of mental health and being open to a good person who can support you mentally. But I would say for people who are comfortable with that, they might accept that, and sometimes they might be hesitant to ask for that actually, because they came maybe from a background they don't talk about these issues a lot. So it would be great if that newcomer or that person was asked if they want that kind of support or not. If you see kind of hesitation in their eyes, they are most likely want it, and like rather than they don't want it. They want it more rather than they don't want it. If they are not at all, they would say no at all. But being hesitant and saying yes, that means yes, they want to see the counselor.
Thank you for commenting on that, because that's really important. Yeah, if we're gonna hang back, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask them, and if not, feel free to just leave the meeting. But we really enjoyed having you here with us, so thank you.
Yeah, the conference is getting over. There's the closing ceremony, and we'd love to see you there. But other than that, have a wonderful day.